Dear friends, Shalom. Thank you for joining us in this very important meeting. I would like to invite Michael Siegel, our president, to open this meeting. Michael, bevasha.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone around the world. I'm sure we're in various time zones, and for you in Australia and New Zealand, thanks for staying up late. We appreciate it very much. Look, this is a very important initiative, and it goes without saying. The crimes that were committed compels us to do more, to try and speak out for not only the abuse to women, but to the abuse to the Jewish people around the world. Even the United Nations, our great friend, had to admit that there was significant violence and rape, and sexual violence used as a technique of Hamas, and yet still we hear women's initiatives around the world remaining silent. It gives us great pause to understand that, as we have led most every liberal civil rights movement in the world, that the world doesn't always stand with us, and we have to remind ourselves that we do have friends, but we do have significant enemies, and that as we speak out in general, we have to always remember that women's rights are human rights, and we have to make sure that we never forget the fact that women are often used as victims in all kinds of ways that are totally unacceptable. And we applaud this initiative that's led by our people in Israel to bring to the forefront the fact that women are so valuable to this world, and that we're being, as Jews, turned invisible. And so I applaud Alana and all the people in Israel who are making this initiative so powerful. And what I say to all of you who lead our mission around the world is to make sure that your wives, your sisters, your children, your daughters become part of this global awareness as we bring this initiative to the forefront of the Maccabi World Movement. We're not just about sports and competition and connectivity. We're about being the best that the world can bring, and we need to be more supportive of women in our movement. And I'm very proud to be associated with this movement, and it's good to see all of you this morning. So I won't take up any more time other than we need to do more. And I'm very, 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 very happy to be part of this movement. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. My name is Sharon Aloni-Kunyo, and together with my female members in the movement's executive in Israel, we established the Movement's Women Forum. We gathered for the first time 2 weeks before the horrible Saturday to initiate joint thinking about how to promote female leadership in the movement. But due to the tragic Shabbat on October 7, we understood that we are facing a moment in the Israeli history that the movement and its members, due to their deployment in the world, have the power to be significant in resonating and carry out action that will influence global public opinion, which will assist in bringing the recognition and the prevention of denial that sexual terrorism occurred and continue to occur in Gaza since October 7.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in a meeting at the moment. Thanks.
Michael, you have to go on mute.
By doing so, it will contribute to the prosecution of terrorists in the future for war crimes and crimes against humanity, and ensure the immediate release of the hostages, children, women, and men. We appreciate your willingness to participate, despite the fact that you will be exposed to difficult testimonies. We, the Israeli Maccabi women leadership, who deal with this issue intensively, find that each new exposure to testimony shakes us again. But at the same time, it strengthens the decision we have made to take this lead in raising awareness and speak up for those who can't. We will open this meeting with words from Mrs. Michal Herzog, President Herzog's wife. Please put your caption on so you can see subtitles.
Shalom, dear friends from Jerusalem. Although the circumstances of this gathering are grim, I feel grateful to all of you for coming together and for your caring. So much was shattered and betrayed on October 7th. Our basic sense of safety and security, our faith that organized atrocities against Jews belonged to the past, and our conviction that the modern world is not indifferent to violence against Jews. Your support for the hostage families has been tremendous and much appreciated, but in fact, one of the most painful issues that has hurt all of us, and especially women, has been the deafening silence across the globe in response to the horrific sexual violence against Israeli women on that dark day, and painfully on every day since. I have been advocating for awareness of these crimes. I have continued to advocate as our hostages remain unthinkably in these very moments subject to horrific sexual crimes. Together, Israeli and Jewish women around the world have attempted to speak out for the women who were twice silenced, once by their vicious attackers, and once again by a world who refused to listen. But it wasn't just the indifference of the world. It was the very organizations whose sole purpose is to protect women. This painful silence, this shameful complicity screams for explanation. But I feel that the continuous efforts to keep the voice of the victims loud and clear is bearing fruit. In this context, I want to thank Mrs. Pramila Patten, the UN envoy for sexual violence and conflict, who ultimately did show with her actions how seriously she took the crimes against Israeli women. She came with her team to Israel to listen and learn firsthand what happened. And with the report, which was just published on Monday, has finally begun to bring the truth to light. I want to thank all of you for bravely leaning in to hear and to see the tremendous pain, not averting your eyes and not allowing the world to avert their eyes either. And may your efforts bring justice to all the survivors and victims. I want to thank all Orly Furman of Maccabi World Union and everyone involved in organizing this event. And I want to thank every one of you who is out there fighting for our people, for every woman, and for justice. Thank you.
In our meeting, we'll have the honor to have the presence of Professor Yiffat Bitton, President of the Achva Academic College in Israel, Major Haim Otmazgin from ZAKA, and Sharon Aloni-Kunyo, who returned from captivity by Hamas together with her two daughters. The meeting will last about an hour and a half. To manage the meeting decently, we would appreciate it if you would make sure that you are in mute mode. If you have questions for the speakers, please write them in the Zoom chat. I invite Orly Furman, Deputy Chairman of Maccabi World Union, to speak on behalf of the Maccabi's Women Forum.
Dear friends, shalom, and thank you for joining us. On October 7th at 6:30 in the morning, Israel faced the worst event of its history. Terrorists from the Hamas organization invaded our homes in the southwest part of Israel and murdered, massacred, raped, and abused innocent citizens, babies, children, women and men, young and old, with no mercy. Youngsters participate a peace festival nearby, found themselves at a party of death, brutally abused and murdered by the monsters of Hamas. On October 7, Hamas kidnapped to Gaza 253 people, mostly civilians, from their homes. 134 of them are still there, suffering every day, every moment. The women of the movement in Israel established the Women's Forum, which seeks to raise awareness to the sexual terrorism among all members of Maccabi World Union. Our goal is to echo the terrible crimes that happened here, violating the international law on crimes of gender violence in war. This is a crime against humanity, and we know for sure it happened. Since October 7, more and more testimonies have been collected and have been heard, describing the horrible sexual terrorism against women, girls, and men. Many of them were murdered by the terrorists, and their voices can no longer be heard. We wish to shout out loud so the entire world will hear the voice of the murdered and the kidnapped. The cry of the victims of this heinous crime should last until the whole world condemns the war crimes. We launched a worldwide project to increase awareness to the horrible crimes of October 7. We held 3 Zoom meetings with leading women from our worldwide communities. We launched a website with updated documents that help our colleagues abroad to echo the message. Our campaign is using the social networks and reached so far millions of viewers and clicks on our website. Last week, we participated in the International Women's Day at the Knesset. I represented Maccabi World Union in the panel that dealt with women at the front line of the Israeli Hasbara. And I spoke about our project and our moral commitment to echo that wherever we can. 2 important reports about the sexual terrorism have been published. A local report published by the Association of Rape Crisis Centers in Israel and the United Nations report published by Pamela Patton after her visit in Israel. We are now waiting to hear how the UN will treat this report. This effort must continue, and we should do everything in our power to convey the message, as Israel is not getting any support from women organizations around the world as expected. Anti-Semitism is taking place in this aspect of the war, as well as in many parts of the world. Our top priority is obviously the returning of our 134 hostages from Gaza. Think about you as a mother or a father who has a 20-year-old daughter closed in a cage in a tunnel 20 meters below ground, and these animals are abusing them physically and mentally for 156 days. We have to get everyone home alive now. Bring them home now. We pray for better days, for better life. Thank you.
And now, I'm honored to invite our first speaker, Professor Yiffat Bitton. Professor Bitton is a legal academic and social activist for equality, and she served as the president of the Achva Academic College in Israel. She has founded and chaired numerous non-governmental organizations working to strengthen human rights and protect women against gender-based violence. For her long-lasting women and human rights work, Professor Bitton has won many national and international distinctions and awards and was shortlisted twice for Israel's Supreme Court, making history as the youngest woman to ever appear on the list. Professor Bitton is deeply involved on October 7 sexual gender-based violence inquiries and treatment from a legal perspective. She spoke at the UN on December 4 at the session dealing with the sexual terrorism. Thank you, Yiffat, for being with us. We can't hear you. Maybe try to choose a different microphone. אם את הולכת לחץ ליד המיוט למטה, צד שמאל למטה.
או למעלה ולוחץ.
עדיין לא שומעים אותך. יש לך אפשרות לבחור את המיקרופון בין שני מיקרופונים או מיקרופון של המחשב? עצות?
או שתיכנס ממכשיר טלפון.
רוצה להתחבר מחדש?
הנה את המיטינג לידי.
We'll wait a second.
שומעים אותי?
כן. תודה.
עכשיו נראה ששומעים, נכון?
כן.
מצוין.
Thank you. Thank you, Yiffat.
Okay, thank you very much. There is a delayed echo, but I hope we'll manage that nevertheless. So thank you very much for the Maccabi movement, for inviting me, for discussing these issues thoroughly as it needs to be discussed when we think of the gravity of the atrocities that were executed in Israel against Israelis by Hamas. It was all like, we know that the atrocities were of a very broad range of torture and pain inflicted upon people, but also at the same time, we want to focus for this session on the gender-based violence, the sexual crimes, war crimes, and crimes against humanity that were commissioned mainly against women, but not only against women, in a range of ages in October 7th and ever since, particularly when the hostages are considered. And I was, reacting to the invitation brought by Ganit Levari to me, even though I'm like really juggling endlessly with my role as the president of an academic college in the South and the head of the board of academic colleges in Israel, who struggle as well in trying to get back to some kind of regularity in the way the academic system must work in order to allow us to stand on our feet again in the way that is more typical to these people, the special people that we belong to. So I know that Ganit and I were in touch during the weeks that followed October 7th, discussing the horrendous findings that I was involved with, and her her particular focus on the issue of gender within your organization, I think, is very important. And I told her, okay, Ganit, even within all the tight schedule that I have, I would love to come and share my experience with this distinguished audience. I'm trying to do a screen sharing, but it has to be enabled by whoever.
Dan, you can share.
Okay. Thanks. So, just a second. I'm trying to see where she opened it. This has become such a big balagan, which it shouldn't have. So what I'm sharing with you today is actually the reality within which we were operating in the last few months. Coming from a background of someone who was a legal scholar and a litigator, both researching and being working as an activist for the rights of women who are victims of sexual abuse, watching the news on October 7th was horrendous to me, in the sense that I knew that what I was seeing was not just a terror attack of the type that we're not accustomed with, but definitely we're not unaccustomed with terror attack Palestinians. This is something that we've endured for many decades. But at the same time, the involvement of women in this attack was of a type and immense that was not known to us. Like, it was very clear that in a situation in which women are at a vulnerable position, namely they're not armed, they're being surprised, many of them in their homes or during a festival that they were attending. The female soldiers that were involved were mostly unarmed as well. And the encounter happens whereby men that are covered with weapon, really armed head to toe, with a bloodlust mission to harm as many people as possible, to murder as many people as possible, and abduct as many as possible in the shortest time possible. It was very clear that this is an ultra dangerous situation for people as a whole, but definitely for women more specifically. And looking at the footage and photos that started streaming on social media, I can tell you that the red flags were there for me and for my colleagues, like waving all over the place. Look at, for example, the picture of Noah Argamani, a hostage being abducted to Gaza on a motorcycle. Now, normally people, when they look at this picture, what they think is, this is bad, this is sad, someone is being taken away. What I see from my perspective is a woman being squeezed against her will between two armed bodies of men she does not know, she opposed being with. Her whole tiny body is being completely touched by their body, all over her body, all over their body. And this is where, to me, gender-based violence begins. So We don't need to see the more explicit footage to understand that this is dangerous and problematic. And on the left-hand side, we can see this beautiful angel, Naama Levi, not even 19 in this picture, and 19 and a bit more now, still in captivity, pulled by this monstrous man, pushing her from, like, grabbing her from the hair and pushing her back into the pickup truck, where many men are roaming inside, and she's being pushed in. And when she's pushed inside, you can see that her trousers are soaked with blood gushing out of her throat. So it's very reasonable to infer, to discern that Naama has already been the victim of sexual abuse. And in this respect, by the way, the fact that I'm showing Naama and I'm calling her by her name, I think one thing is to call Noah and Naama by their names, to remember that these are human beings, because what was taken from them was their humanity at that time. And this is what gender-based violence is intended to do, to take the humanity out of the person, out of the woman that is being subjected to it, and to instill terror, fear, chaos in the population or the community to which or of which she is part of. And this little angel in here is Aisha Abu El Zayadna, and she is from the Bedouin community in the south. She's a Muslim, and she was taken as well into captivity, and thankfully was released like a few days before she turned 18 in one of the deals where hostages under 18 were somehow allowed out after a very substantial negotiation over her wealth. And that shows you that, on the one hand, this act of terror was directed against Israelis, and in that respect, they could be either Jewish or Muslim, Jewish or non-Jewish, but at the same time, this is an atrocity held against women, regardless of who they are. And not just in that respect, the fact that they're Israelis is one thing, but there's also a Thai origin worker who was also abducted, a woman who was also abducted, and from what we know, many of the hostages, and maybe she as one of them, have endured the gender-based violence that we discuss in here. So normally when we ask where is the world, like I've heard Ms. Fruman asking before, where is the world? Where are all the international organizations? And I'm part of this community, both as a legal scholar, as an activist. I've been, fighting in the battlefields, in the feminist battlefields for bringing justice to women victims of sexual violence. And when we turned to them, we got a very cold shoulder from many of them. Not all of them, some of them have stood next to us, with us, and but I'm more interested in that respect in the organizations that have an international role, formal role, namely that they are entrusted with a mandate to take care of such events when they happen, to be the first to respond, to make sure that people know of what happened, and to stand with the women who were hurt. So an example for such an organization is UN Women, which was not responding. And I need to provide you with the context. I'm sorry, some of the writing is still in Hebrew, I see. I need to put in the context for you to understand that there's a really fast track for issuing a declaration by UN Women. Normally it takes a few hours. If something happens that is very clear to the naked feminist eye, maybe not the naked general eye, but definitely the eye of a feminist, of someone who's accustomed with these kind of atrocities. And once the declaration is issued, there is a set of actions that can be followed and that can help establishing the consciousness raising campaign and the understanding that this is what has happened, and issuing assistance in the case that it's relevant. Most of the cases where it's relevant is where such amount of sexual assault is happening, which is normally in developing type of countries, non-Western countries. And there the issuing assistance in the form of sheltering these women, providing financial resources are also very important. With us, it was way less relevant, but we did need the backing, in the sense that what happened was that shortly after October 7th, the claim was that Israelis are liars, and that this is an Israeli propaganda, and that none of this has happened. Absolutely none of what is relevant to the gender-based violence, which in a way, like my thoughts were contradicting on this reaction, because on the one hand, it was devastating to see how we were slurred as liars. Okay, but on the other hand, at the same time, my thought was that people still want to distance themselves from using women's body as a weapon of war. And I thought that in that respect, this is an optimistic dynamic that I can look at. And that made me even more determined to make sure that, first of all, that they know that this has been done. The world know that this has been done as a means for the world to provide the world with an opportunity to condemn this kind of behavior, regardless of what the political context is. And the second thing was to make sure that it is so shameful, and the shame is not anymore on the victims, but rather on the perpetrators who want to distance themselves from doing something like that. And I think also that what was very important when it came to again trying to catch the attention of UN Women was that the fact that they were silent led to an incitement to hate and legitimization for hatred against Israelis, Jews, more generally perceived anti-Semitic behavior to prosper. So the silence was very effective in this case in terms of what it caused, beyond the question of recognition of non-recognition of the sexual assaults. And one of the I don't think it was a real reason, but one of the excuses as to why UN Women did not condemn the atrocities, the sexual crimes, was that they claimed that there's no evidence whatsoever to try and allow them to issue a statement. So first of all, we know that many times it's enough that it's on the newspaper. If you look at the example of a ban on education for Afghan women in one of the villages in Afghan, which is important, but at the same time, no one went to Afghanistan to make sure that this is what's happening. And furthermore, when it comes to sexual crimes, we've been dealing with this for decades, with trying to expand as much as possible the statute of limitations, to make sure that no one requires the golden evidence that is maybe required and normally can be recovered in other cases of crimes committed. and so on and so forth. So we were like going backwards in that respect, harming the whole feminist, all of these feminist achievements that I proudly took part of in the stepping stones that led to the point where those questions were no longer asked, but they were asked by these organizations. And the answer to that is that the ability to collect evidence, to recover evidence, to have forensic evidence in the amount and scale that we normally have in reasonable and normal crime scenes was just irrelevant to what was happening in Israel. So first and foremost, there was the chaos. The chaos was paralyzing, was taking professionalism away, putting it aside, making everyone ask themselves, what is the one huge mission that we now have? And the answer was to identify people, to bring them to their loved ones who were worried sick about whether they were murdered, survived somewhere, maybe being held hostage. So the identification process was very, very important, and we started everything with such a shortage in professionals to execute it. Definitely no one was prepared to such a scale of dead people, of dead bodies, of bodies that needed to be looked at, of scenes that needed to be looked at, and to as a means to inquire what has happened in each and every house in the kibbutzim, if you look at the kibbutzim and moshavim, or what happened in different parts of the woods, if we're talking about the Nova Festival. So, for example, in one of the testimonies that we have a woman telling the story about how she hid in the bushes and she saw a gang rape, horrible one, of two women. And what the police had to do was to try and corroborate it by going back to this place, and somehow they were able to recover something from the grass that could corroborate her story. And this story went into Pramila Patton's report. But you have to understand that the woman who provided the eyewitness account, it took her a while to come forward to the police, and it was a moment that they were able to corroborate her testimony. And there are many such cases where things just take time before people are able to somehow find their voice within this horrific, complex trauma. The layers of trauma that were accumulating in this case were just unimaginable, of the kind that we would not have imagined that could have happened in Israel. So war zone versus crime zone issues were done within a day. The police understands that there's no way they're going to be able to cover it. So they might as well focus on the one thing of identification and burial. The fact that the attack was a one-day attack. It was 1 day, 1.5 day of attack, and then going back to Gaza, it was in a very short time. So the mission was to kill as many people as possible. And this is why we see that most of the victims, this is also appearing on Patton's report, most of the sexual assault victims were killed anyway, were murdered. So the ability to collect evidence, when you see, think of tens and hundreds of bodies of people murdered, and now needing to think of whether I should be looking into she had been sexually assaulted or not. Some of the detectives that I spoke with just, looked at me like they didn't know what I was talking about. They didn't know what were you thinking? They were like, what would you want us to think? Getting into an apartment, seeing 6 dead bodies. So one of them is without clothing. What can we do? We can now start, making the mark on the floor, we wouldn't even move the body for hours and hours when we need to analyze, to forensically analyze a scene. There was no crime scene in that respect. It was irrelevant. And the fact that it was very condensed also, as I said, made it harder to detect these crimes as opposed to continuously attacking villages or communities and attacking the women, which is more typical of what we see in developing countries, because like with Israel, it took us the longest while that no one would imagine it would take, but then eventually when the army was there, it was done and they were pushed out and they can never come back in the next few years, at least few years, hopefully more than that. And this is why it doesn't look like what we're used to seeing in borders or conflict zones where these atrocities are happening every other time. Like think of the Yazidi and ISIS, think of Boko Haram, places like that. The first responders, as I said, many of them operated under fire, in a combat zone. So they did not have the ability or the, both mental and physical ability to deal with taking evidence. The ZAKA people, as you probably know, this organization are considered, so the letter Zayin or Z on the ZAKA stands for identification, Zihui, but actually they're not identifying. They're not identifying bodies. They're not in the process of identification. They help those who do that. They collect the bodies. So the organization to do the identification is the police, the investigative police. So everything went again in this direction. And the ZAKA people themselves, when most of them don't even hold a smartphone. They're very religious people. They do it out of, it's like a mitzvah that they do, where they can praise the sacredness of the Jewish body even when it's dead. So their intuition is to see a naked body and to cover it, not to start taking a picture of it from all angles. And those who have taken some pictures, some of the pictures are blurred. They're not, it's hard to establish exactly what you see in the picture. Again, those are comments that Pramila Patton also added to her report. This is why the report is also very important. I met with her and with her team, and I was talking extensively on these investigative challenges, and I'm glad that it went into her report, even though just slightly, because I think that it implies that she understands that under such circumstance, it's almost impossible to collect evidence.
Yiffat?
Yes.
Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. Very important and interesting. And you start speaking about the ZAKA people, and we actually have one of the ZAKA representative here with us also to tell his story. So
No, you don't have to be sorry. This is exactly the time, I think, to move forward. Exactly the point where it could be. How that works. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And for the next speaker, who will be speaking in Hebrew, you have a translation instruction in the chat.
תקשיבי, אין לנו וידאו. אין לנו וידאו. שלנו, תמשיכי.
I'm honored to invite our next speaker, Major Haim Otmazgin. Haim serves in the reserves as a data collection officer in the National Rescue Unit of the Home Front Command and in citizenship as the commander of the special unit of ZAKA. Haim was recruited to the unit at 6:45 a.m. and arrived at the party around 9 p.m. when there were only a few terrorists in the area. Haim, thank you, תודה רבה, for being with us.
חברות וחברים של מכבי העולמי, אני מודה לכם כאזרח ישראלי על זה שאתם מפנים מהזמן שלכם ומתכנסים לשבת יחד, לשמוע ולהיות איתנו בחוויה שאנחנו עוברים כאן, חוויה היסטורית. ב-7 לאוקטובר אני הייתי חתן תורה, הייתי אמור ללכת לבית כנסת, היו לי הרבה אורחים בבית. בשעה 6:42 קיבלתי טלפון מהיחידה שלי, יחידת החילוץ הארצית של פיקוד העורף, ומקפיצים אותי ליחידה. אני מתארגן מהר, אני עובר על כל השלבים של להבין מהר מאוד שמדובר במלחמה, ומחג אני מיד עולה על מדים ומגיע לבסיס. היחידה שלי, ההתמחות שלה זה חילוץ של אנשים מאתרי ארץ, והמוכנות שלנו הייתה לבדוק את כל הכלים ואת כל הציוד, אם ייפול טיל שנוכל להגיע ולחלץ. עד השעה 7 בערב. 7 בערב אני מקבל טלפון מחבר, קצין בדרום, שואל אותי, חיים, תוך כמה זמן גופה מרחיק? אני מקשיב לקול שלו בטלפון ואני מבין שהוא בסערה, שעובר עליו משהו, אני אומר לו, משה, למה אתה שואל את השאלה הזאת? האם אתה מאמן חיילים? האם אתה מתמודד עם איזו סיטואציה? שתף אותי. אומר לי, משה, אני נמצא ביער, קוראים לזה המסיבה, יש כאן מעל 125 גופות, במצב קשה, אני לא יודע מה לעשות, ללא המספר הסופי, אני התבלבלתי בספירה, יש יותר, אני חייב עזרה. אני מנסה להבין מה קורה, כי בתקשורת דיברו על 20 הרוגים, 30 הרוגים, עדיין לא ידעו את היקף ההרוגים, או לא פרסמו את היקף ההרוגים, והוא מראה לי וידאו ממה שקורה שם, ואני מבין, אני שואל אותו, ומה עם המפקדים שלך? הוא אומר לי, כולם יורים פה, יש פה מלחמה, יש פה מחבלים, יש פה פצמרים, זרקו לי את המשימה, ואמרו לי, תמצא פתרון, והוא פונה אליי, בגלל שיש לי גם כובע צבאי, וגם כובע של מפקד יחידות מיוחדות של זק"א, והוא מבקש את העזרה שלי. אני מרים טלפון למפקד שלי, ואני אומר לו כך וכך האירוע, אני חושב שהיחידה שלנו יכולה לטפל בעניין, הוא עושה כמה טלפונים, ואנחנו יוצאים בדרך, מגיעים למשפט. כולכם שמעתם צורה כזאת או אחרת על האסון, הרבה הרוגים. אני לא כאן כדי לספר לכם את מה שקורה. אני כאן כדי לתת לכם כלים לענות לכל אלו שמעיזים להטיל ספק בזכות שלנו להגן על עצמנו. אני כאן כדי לתת לכם את הכלים לענות לאלו שחושבים שאנחנו נלחמים בחפים מפשע. אני כאן כדי להסביר שאנחנו נלחמים למען אזרחי עזה החפים מפשע, להציל אותם והאנשים שנמצאים מתוכם. וזה אני אעשה באמצעות שיתוף של קצת מהדברים שאני ראיתי בעיניים, שאני נגעתי בידיים, לא 1, לא 10 וגם לא 100. אני טיפלתי בשבוע הראשון של 7 באוקטובר במעל 600 גופות של אזרחים יהודים או ישראלים, אחר כך קרוב 500 נוספים של מחבלים, גם אותם אספנו. אני רוצה לספר לכם שאנחנו אנשי מקצוע, אנחנו מגיעים לאירועים מהסוג הזה ועובדים כמו מכונה. לפני שנה וחצי, פחות משנה וחצי, שנה וקצת, היינו בטורקיה ברעידת אדמה. עשרות אלפי הרוגים, ראינו בעיניים, התמודדנו, זה כואב. אבל אנחנו אנשי מקצוע, אנחנו יודעים להתמודד ולתת את השירות, והעזרה והכבוד לגוף האדם גם לאחר מותו, וכמובן לתמוך במשפחה. מה שראינו כאן, זה לא היה דומה לשום דבר אחר שראינו בעולם, ואני 30 שנה רואה גופות, 30 שנה אני מתנדב בזק"א, 30 שנה אני רואה מקרי מוות בלתי טבעיים בארץ ובעולם, באסונות, באירועי טרור ובאירועי טבע. מה שראיתי כאן לא דומה לשום דבר. מה שראיתי כאן זה לא אנשים שבאו לנצח, זה אנשים שבאו להשחית, זה אנשים שבאו לרמוס, זה אנשים שבאו לחלל כל ערך אנושי, ובעיקר במה שקשור לערך אנושי. הם באו עם כלי נשק, רובה וידיים. ברובה הם ירו מטווח אפס, לא לפני שהם פגעו גם בידיים, אותם הם שלחו לבגדים של אותם צעירות בגיל של הבת שלי. אותם הם שלחו לגוף של אותם נשים ונערות שהייתה מספיק צעקה אחת כדי להכניע אותם, אבל הם לא באו לנצח, הם באו להשפיל. הם עשו את זה בכל מקום, הם עשו את זה במסיבה, הם עשו את זה בפרדסים של האנשים שנמלטו לתוך הפרדסים, הם עשו את זה בקיבוצים, הם עשו את זה בדרכים. זו הייתה שיטת העבודה שלהם, זו תורת הלחימה שלהם. אתה מגיע, אם אין לך זמן, תהרוג. אם יש לך קצת יותר זמן, תיגע במקומות אינטימיים של גברים, של נשים. אם יש לך יותר זמן, תשרוף. גם החומר בעירה שהם שפכו, יש לי תמונות שאני צילמתי שהם שפכו אותם על חומרים, על אזורים מסוימים בגוף, בחלק של הראש והחזה, בחלק של המותניים והמפצע. הם לא הסתפקו בלירות כדי להרוג. אחרי או לפני שהם הרגו, הם ירו באופן שיטתי לנשים בין הרגליים. הם הורידו בגדים. לא מאמין שאפשר ליהנות בסיטואציה כזאת. אבל הם לא באו ליהנות. זה הנשק שלהם. זו תורת הלחימה שלהם. להפר כל כלל אנושי. אני מבין את אלו שלא מאמינים לסיפורים שלנו. שכל אנושי לא יכול להקל ולהכיל כאלה סיפורים. אבל אני ראיתי, אני נגעתי, אני צילמתי, אני גם הראיתי את זה לחוקרים של האו"ם, והם נתנו תוקף לתמונות האלו ולעובדות שמשתאות מהתמונות האלו. ואת זה אתם צריכים לדעת. אתם יכולים להגיד בכל מקום בעולם בו אתם נמצאים. אני דיברתי עם מי שראה את זה, אני דיברתי עם מי שאסף את זה בידיים, אני דיברתי עם מי שצילם והראה את התמונות לאו"ם ולמשטרה ולכל גורמי ההסברה, והסיפורים הם אמת. אני בידיים שלי הייתי צריך להוריד חצאית למישהי שהרימו לה את החצאית, הורידו לה את התחתונים וירו בה בין הרגליים. אני הייתי צריך לחסות פה לגוף עליון של בחורה בגיל של שנות ה-20, שירו בה באוזן מטווח אפס, שחטו אותה בגרון והפשילו לה את הבגדים. אני אספתי את אנשים בפרדס שברחו מהרכב שלהם ורדפו אחריהם 300 מטר לתוך הפרדס, הגיעו אליהם. אין לי וידאו של מה שהיה שם, אבל יש לי וידאו שהן שוכבות עם הפנים לקרקע, עם רגליים מפוסקות, מכנס ארוך קרוע עד המפצעה, ומפצעה מדממת מירי. זה לא אותם אנשים של המסיבה, זה מישהו אחר. אני אספתי את האישה שמצאנו בקיבוץ אחרי כמה ימים, שהיא הייתה ערומה לגמרי. מישהו הוריד לה את הבגדים. תקעו לה מסמרים, כן, איפה שאתם חושבים. תקעו לה סכין, איפה שאתם חושבים. זה מצולם. אתם מדברים איתי. אני אומר לכם, אתם חייבים להיות חלק מהמלחמה שלנו. אתם לא יכולים לסיים את השיחה הזאת ולהגיד מסכנים, או צריך לעזור להם. אתם צריכים להגיד, אנחנו חלק ממאבק ההסברה הבינלאומי שמסביר לעולם שהמלחמה שלנו היא נגד אותם רוצחים שגרים יחד עם האנשים שחפים מפשע גם בעזה. אותם אנשים צריכים רק כרטיס טיסה של $400 לאירופה, $700 לארצות הברית, כדי להגיע אליכם, כן, אליכם. אם משהו לא ימצא חן ביניהם, הם יגיעו אליכם בכרטיס טיסה, את הסכין הם לא יביאו בטרולי. את הסכין הם ייקחו מהבית שלכם. את זה העולם צריך להבין. עכשיו הם על הגדר שלנו. הם מאוד מאוד יכולים להיות על הגדר של כל מקום. אלו אנשים, הם לא אנשים, הם תתי אדם. הם יותר גרועים מחיה, חיה טורפת כדי לאכול. הם טרפו מתוך תפיסה אסלאמית רדיקלית, מתוך קיצוניות וטירוף בלתי נשלט. את הסיפור הזה אתם צריכים להביא לעולם. אני חוסך מכם עוד תיאורים על גופות הידיים שלי נגעו והעיניים שלי ראו והטלפון שלי. אבל אני מתחנן אליכם. אני הבטחתי שהייתי מעל הגופות שבהם טיפלתי. שאת השפתיים האלו שהפסיקו לדבר, אני אדבר בשמם. אני אצעק את הצעקה שלהם. ואתם, הדרך שלי לעשות את זה, כל אחד במקום שלי. אל תחשבו מה אני יכול להשפיע. מספיק שתספרו על השיחה. מספיק שתאספו חומר ותדעו שהוא אמיתי, ותדעו שהוא אמת. מספיק שתקפו להיגיון של האנשים ותקבלו את זה שהם לא מעכלים את זה, כי הם אנושיים, אבל התרחשו כאן דברים לא אמת. אם אתם תעשו את זה, אני אקיים את החלק שלי, והבטחתי לאותם נרצחים ונרצחות, לצעוק את הצעקה שלהם בעולם, לעולם לא נפתח, די לשתיקה.
חיים, תודה רבה על העדות והדברים הקשים, באמת גם לא ברור מאליו, אנחנו יודעים שגם כל פעם נספר את זה מחדש, זה תעצומות נפש, אנחנו מודים לך מאוד, והיה לנו מאוד מאוד חשוב שאתה תהיה חלק ממפגש הזום העולמי הזה שלנו. תודה רבה.
תודה רבה, חיים.
And now I'm honored to invite our last and next speaker, Sharon Aloni-Kunyo. Sharon and her almost 4 years old twin daughters, Emma and Julie, were released from captivity after 52 days. Her sister Danielle was also released along with her daughter Emilia. Her husband David Kunyo and his brother Ariel Kunyo are still in Hamas captivity. Thank you, Sharon, for joining us. Toda, Sharon.
Thank you, first of all, for having me here and listening to my story. I will tell you a little bit shortly about what happened to us on October 7th. It all began at 6 a.m., 6:30 in the morning, when we had the missile alerts coming out strongly, like we never heard it before. We went into the safe room along with my sister and my nephew, who came to visit us for a Simchat Torah weekend. A while after, around 7:15, we got a message that there are terrorists inside the kibbutz dressed as soldiers and that we should get inside the safe room and hold the doors and not open to anyone. Messages started to come from everyone on the kibbutz saying that they're in my house, in my house, in my house. And then we began to hear about people getting shot, houses being burned. And we only could wish for that they won't arrive to our house. A while afterwards, they came into our neighbor's house. We were texting along with my family the whole time. My parents, who lives in center of Israel, were stressed. They didn't know what happened. We just told them there are crazy amount of terrorists inside the kibbutz. In Nir Oz alone, there were a few hundreds of terrorists without any army that came up until all the terrorists and all the people from Gaza has left the kibbutz. The army got there only by 2. At around 10, they entered our house. They broke in. We started to hear them screaming in Arabic. They were shouting Allahu Akbar. And then they got into the safe room and they tried to open the door, forced to open the door. My husband battled with them after he already held the door since 6:30 a.m. because the doors of the safe room are not built in order to prevent someone from coming in, only from missiles. At that point, they began to open a bit the handle of the door. He screamed at me to come and help him. I jumped on the door and helped him, and they fought with us for several minutes. And then they gave up. They cut off the electricity, so we didn't have any air or any light. And then a few minutes later, they started lighting something up. They started burning our house down in order to, they wanted just to suffocate us to death. At that point, we later on learned that they opened the gas and the house was burned down to the ground. At that point, all the smoke started to get inside the safe room. And I told my husband that we have no other choice, but we have to open the window and climb out. He went out first with our daughter, one of the twins, Julie. We watched 3 of our cars just being burned, and we didn't even understood the amount of terrorists inside the kibbutz because our house is first line to the fence towards Gaza. I saw terrorists coming nearby. I told them, grab the girl and run away and close the window. Afterwards, we opened the window again, and there was a terrorist outside the window pointing with a Kalashnikov at me. I screamed at my sister to close the door, to close the window, and he took 2 shots to the iron window. And I think at that point, I understood that we are about to suffocate to death. Amelia, my niece, started screaming that she can't breathe. Emma was choking. She couldn't stop coughing. She's asthmatic. And I think at that point I gave up and I passed out. Danielle, my sister, didn't want to die like this. So she told me, she shook me and woke me up and told me, open the window so they will shoot us because it will be painful but faster than to suffocate slowly to death. We opened the window and we waited for them to shoot us. There were 5 or 6 of them outside with their weapons. They dragged me out first. I fell down to the ground because I was half conscious. And they took everyone out. And one of them just dragged me on my knees when I'm half conscious. And at that point, I understood that he was going to rape me and kill me. And at that time, they took my sister, my niece, and my other twin, Emma, to a different place. They separated us. When the terrorist dragged me, he dragged me towards the fields and to I don't know how to say it. Thankfully, he dragged me towards the car that my husband and my daughter were taking on. They caught them in our neighbor's house. He yelled at them, "This is my wife." And they marked the terrorist to come and bring me to them. I think this is the only reason why I didn't get raped and killed. When they took us to Gaza, there were three of us, me, my husband, David, and one of our twin daughters, Yuli. We were held at a house of a family, not innocent family. The conditions were terrible. We're not allowed to leave the room. We had two armed terrorists guarding us 24/7. I almost lost my mind thinking, where is Emma? Where is my daughter? I kept asking them to give me answer. Where is my daughter? They didn't know. After 9 days, the house next to us was bombed. The wall came tumbling at us, coming down at us, and they decided to move us to a different place. The next day, they wanted to do a video of us to the elderly. So they told me to put on the hijab, and I started hearing sounds of crying, of a baby crying. And I said, I held David and I told him, it's Emma. And he told me, you're losing your mind. Why would she be here? And then the crying got louder and someone came into the room handing me Emma. After 10 days, she was alone with not with my sister, by herself at a Gazan house with no ability to speak with someone because no one spoke their Hebrew. They didn't give her a pacifier. They changed her diaper once a day. They didn't shower her. They gave her barely food. She didn't sleep. She slept on the floor. When we were kidnapped, they were 3 years and 3 months old. And at that point, all of us have been together. And I started asking Emma, where is Danielle and Amelia? And the only thing she said was when they were kidnapped, the men spilled in red. A sentence that I will never forget. Later on, after our release, I found out that when they took Danielle, Emilia, and Emma out of the window, they took them alone to Gaza. They loaded on the truck a dying Israeli soldier, which had died on the truck, and all of his blood came down on the girls' legs. We were all taking with our pajamas barefoot. And once they got into Gaza Strip, some guy came and took Emma from my sister's hands. And when she started to shout at him and scream at him that this is her daughter, as far as he knows, he just pointed a gun at her and signaled her to sit down. And they took her to the tunnels. And we have a missing period of 10 days, which we don't know what she has been through. 3-year-old girl. 3 days prior to our release, they separated David from us, my husband. They told us that there's a deal coming up and only women and children are allowed to be released. They took him down to the tunnels. And as far as the end of November, we have no information whatsoever about him, about his condition, about where he is right now. The conditions there were awful. Every day is filled with despair, filled with fear of being killed, of being raped, of just thinking that everyone gave up on you. And I was released with my girls after 52 days. My husband has been there for over 150 days. 3 times the amount of time that we were there. I can't even imagine what is his condition right now. The not even physical terror, but the mental terror, the psychological terror that they used. They really let us believe that no one cares about us as the days went by, when we saw that it's not happening after a day or two and we're still here, something really I really started to believe that we're staying here, that we are not getting out. And I can't even explain to you the conditions we were held in. We were 12 people in one room. We weren't allowed to come out of the room, only for the bathroom, and you had to knock in order to go out. You don't know if they will open to you after 2 minutes or 2 hours. I have 2 little girls who had to pee and poop in the sink and in the trash can because I can't take them in time to the bathroom. They're hearing the bombing outside, the electricity that a lot of times were disconnected, the humidity, the heat. The food, we had moldy pita and cheese, a little cheese. I lost 22 pounds in 52 days. And I always say that from November 24th, the day that they took my husband away from me, I am an empty shell. We lost everything. Our house was completely burned down. We lost, I have no memory, nothing to hold on to from my husband. They took our rings when we got into Gaza. And my girls keep asking me every day, why don't they bring daddy back? And I have to tell them because the people in Gaza still haven't decided that it is his turn. And it is a very difficult thing to say to a 3.5-year-old girls, they just want their dad back. We have no house. We're staying at my parents' place because I can't handle anything alone. I'm an empty shell. I'm depressed. I'm trying to be strong for my girls. But as the day goes on, it's getting worse. And I don't know where I can keep on praying or have hope to see them back if the world wouldn't help us to do so. Because people are starting to get used to the fact that there are hostages in Gaza. People that say that October 7th never happened, and I'm the live proof of that. I'm the living proof of that. People, they're saying that we are liars, that we just came forward to talk about it a month after our release, when we weren't even able to speak loudly because we always have to whisper during captivity. So I am here today begging you to do everything you can, talk to everyone you know, because they are suffocating to death in those tunnels. They are being molested. They are being raped, both women and men as well, as we know. I don't want to get a video that Hamas is informing me that my husband was killed. He doesn't deserve it. None of them deserve it. We were only people. We are only civilians that just spent the time during the holidays. And since then, we almost had 4 holidays since October 7th. We are about to celebrate Passover next month, the holiday of freedom. how can I celebrate any freedom when they are still there? So please contact everyone, everyone who has the little influence in order to share our stories, share our suffering. I promised my husband when we were separated that I will do anything from him and I will fight for him up until the end. And as much as it hurts me to relive it every day over and over again, I have to do it for him. I want to see him at home. I want to see Ariel, my brother-in-law. I want to see Arbel, and hopefully she's not being raped there. I want to see everyone back. And I was lucky to be released after 52 days. It's been far too long for them. And my mental state isn't good. It will take me years and years, and the girls as well, to have to understand and process what we've been through at October 7th and during our captivity. But their state is much harder because it's been over 150 days, and God knows how long it will take. So I thank you for listening to me, and I hope you can do everything you can in order to help us.
תודה רבה, Sharon. Thank you very much. It's very hard to speak after hearing your story. You're a brave woman, and we appreciate that you joined our meeting. And we are here in order to speak up your story and pray that David and Ariel and Arbel and the rest of the hostages will be released immediately. We'll be able to celebrate with you Pesach. תודה רבה. תודה. חיבוק גדול. תודה.
Yeah.
This is the moment on our Zoom meeting that it's very hard to continue, but we don't want to end our meeting before speaking also about the actions, because that's the reason that we start all this project. So before we end our meeting, I would like to share with you some of the actions that were done to assist you with reliable information and following to our previous Zoom meetings. As already shared with you at the beginning, we launched an informational platform with a variety of sources, testimonials, articles from the media, webinars that have taken place since October 7. And at the end of this Zoom meeting, we will also upload its recording as well. Our social campaign, mainly on Facebook, reached so far about 12 million exposures and 12,000 clicks on our website, and we really hope that it will continue to be used. Last week took place in Europe 2 gatherings with our members' involvement, one in Berlin and the other in Amsterdam. In Italy, an article was published in the local newspaper. In North America, Zoom meetings similar to this one are planned to take place in the next few weeks in Baltimore with the BZD, Maccabi USA Women Forum, and hosting a professional delegation in Miami on Mother's Day. More events that are still not defined, but communities already share their interest. It is essential to say that all the Zoom meetings we conduct are the first step in the bringing awareness and speak up for those who can't. We believe, as I said before, that we have as a movement the duty and the power to be significant in echoing this important issue and in carry out action which will assist in bringing immediately back home our hostages and prevent the world's denial of the sexual terrorism that occurred and still occurring in Gaza since October 7. We encourage you to be in touch with us regarding any initiative you would like to do. This is the website, address, and email for any question and help. We also will put them in the chat. Before saying goodbye, does someone want to say something, to share thoughts? That's the time.
I do. I recently came across a group called the 49% and the Collective. They are Muslim and Jewish women that are wanting to promote the narrative of what's happened on October 7th. And they had an article in the Newsweek last week, and they're doing a lot of social media. I'll send you the link. It's worth collaborating with them.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. So, before saying shalom, we all pray for better days. May all our hostages and soldiers return home healthy in body and mind. Thank you for being with us. Am Israel Chai. Thank you very much. Toda rabba. Thank you. Bye.